We're at Kansas Speedway, and 1 week after Danica Patrick's historic win at Twin Ring Motegi. If you thought Danica Mania was over the top in 2005, well, as the saying goes, you ain't seen nothing yet. Everyone apparently wants a piece of the history-making event, and for Danica herself, well, she must be getting writer's cramp from all the autographs, but now it's time to get back to business. For Danica Patrick, winning was never a matter of if, only a matter of when.
One thing missing from this room, though, is the Indianapolis 500 trophy. That's my goal.
For a moment, all is right with the world. Danica Patrick leading the Indianapolis 500.
For 49 races, alongside IndyCar's best, winning turned to waiting as critics asked the question, can she win?
If I could, yes I would. If I could, I would.
I thought it was my day off. I just want this weight off my shoulders.
Last Sunday, she made history. 1.5 miles to go for Danica Patrick. Could history be made? And boys, move over. The lady is coming through. Danica Patrick wins at Twin Ring Motegi.
It's a long time coming. Finally.
A lifelong dream fulfilled. Today, Danica Patrick races for the first time as an IndyCar winner. And with golf going long over on ESPN2, we're going to start things off here at ESPN Classic with the IndyCar 300 from Kansas Speedway, the fourth stop on the 2008 IndyCar Tour. And the drivers have just climbed into the cockpits. There is Danica Patrick. Of course, we'll be talking a lot about her today as a lot of focus, a lot of attention after the big win last week at Twin Ring Motegi in Japan. Earlier, before she climbed in the cockpit, we had a chance to talk to her. Vince Welch caught up with Danica.
Since that history-making victory at Motegi a week ago for Danica Patrick, well, there's been a t-shirt commemorating her very first win. Sales at DanicaRacingStore.com are up 900%, and her home state of Illinois has had a day in her honor. Wow, it's been a pretty big week for you. How about that? We've seen how the impact has affected so many others, but how about the impact on you with the victory at Motegi?
Oh, well, relief, as I've said many times. But, you know, I think it's just going to be a lot of really good things to come, some of which I probably don't even know yet. So we'll see how it all unfolds. It's all happened pretty quick, and, you know, we're all working hard to make sure that we take advantage of it and you know, make the most of the happening.
We couldn't turn on the TV this week without seeing you on some show. What part of that was fun and what part was work?
Well, you know, I'm pretty girly away from the track, and so I like the hair, the makeup part, getting dressed up, and, you know, it's always fun to do the live interviews. I always like to, they're just fun because I love Marco, because, you know, you get to be yourself and they don't cut anything out. So that's a good time. It's always good to see some of those big name, you know, guest hosts. So, you know, there's a lot of really good things.
You've gotten the first win. Now, what's the next mountain to climb for Danica Patrick?
You know, another win. I think that, you know, all of us drivers could tell you that it's hard to win. It's tough. You know, you got to have a little luck on your side and things have to fall right. So that'll be the next one.
Now, very quick today. She'll start in the third position. Marty, looking for win number 2.
That's right. She'll be starting behind Scott Dixon and Dan Weldon in the number 3 spot. And there she is with the focus now back into the attention to the matters at hand, and let's bring in our analyst, Scott Goodyear. We usually talk about momentum heading into Indianapolis, but we've got two different sets of momentum. Hers coming out of Japan and everybody else trying to get ready for the month of May.
And Marty, for Danica Patrick, she is now a race winner, as we just noted, so the most important thing for her is to continue that momentum. You know something, she was always a driver with potential, but now she's looking for her second IndyCar win, which is always a great feeling once you've got that first. And most importantly, she believes in herself, the team believes in her, the engineers believe in her, and the fans stop asking that question: when are you going to win your first race?
All right, there is our pole sitter, Scott Dixon, and let's show you the points as we are heading into this fourth race. Remember, there was double points. Elio Castroneves has a 12-point lead over Scott Dixon. Danica Patrick, the highest she's ever been, all the way through to the top 12 with Marco Andretti 47 back. There is the rest of the field as it's now time to head trackside to get this fourth race of the 2008 season underway.
Race fans, are you ready? It's time for those most famous words in motorsports. Please welcome back Roger and Brittany Ponder as they give the command.
Ladies
and gentlemen, start your engines.
Twenty-seven cars will take the grid. More on that as we show you the starting grid. Across the top of our screen, you'll notice it is all Chip Ganassi up front, as Scott Dixon and Dan Weldon have been strong since unloading. Danica Patrick starts third. Thomas Scheckter in his first race back with that new team, Luxo Dragon. Remember, they made an appearance last year at Indianapolis. Well, there will be running a limited schedule. He is starting fourth, and then there is his car right there. AJ Foyt the fourth, and his teammate from Vision Racing, Ed Carpenter, sixth. And take a look at the number 7 spot.
Marty Roth, who's run a limited program in the past, now comes full-time this season. He's in an area he's never been up to before in qualifying. Be interesting to see how he responds on the start.
So as you see the rest of the 27-car field across the top of your screen, let's get our final reports from pit lane, and let's talk a little bit about the fatigue factor. Not so much from the drivers, Jack Root, but you were over in Japan. You did double duty, made it back to Motegi, from there to Long Beach. What's it like for everybody?
Well, consider the fact that for people like me and the drivers, Marty, it's not too bad because we have the luxury of traveling back and forth and just appearing at the race itself. But for the crews up and down this pit road, it's been the most brutal 18 days of the entire season. Why? Well, first they had to load all the equipment in Indianapolis, then go to Japan, then the rain delay, then stay over an extra day, load the equipment, receive it back in Indianapolis, and get it ready here for Kansas. So the fatigue factor compared to other races, very, very high with the crews. How can that come into play today? Well, on a final pit stop, when a split second can equate to maybe 50, 60, even 100 yards out on the racetrack, one mistake, Vince Welch, can be the difference between winning and losing.
Well, and Jack, it's been a different set of challenges for the team's Transition Car Series. Remember, they didn't take possession of their Delaras until, what, maybe a month or even less before that first race at Homestead. And then at that first race at Homestead Speedway, some of these teams had drivers that had never even seen an oval before, much less raced on one. The very next week, they had to change over their cars for the road course setup at St. Petersburg. Then it was back to the Panos chassis for the final Champ Car event at Long Beach, and now back into the Delara cars here this weekend for their second oval at Kansas Speedway. A different set of challenges, but each of these transition teams knows a challenge just the same. They want to improve on their results from Homestead and head to Indianapolis on a positive note. Brian Pedigo?
Vince, you take those challenges into account, and you've really got to give today's edge to Thomas Scheckter and Lusso Dragon Racing. This is their first event of the season. They have had their own set of challenges, though. They've had only 25 days to put this car together, but so far, so good. Thomas will start fourth today, well meeting their goal to qualify within the top 10. And part of the reason Thomas is with this team is because he's so fast on ovals. He's led 165 laps here at Kansas in the past, and Marty, Scott, don't be surprised if he adds to that number today.
And we won't be, Brianne. Thanks for the updates, guys. Let's talk a little bit about what we should look for today, Scott.
Well, one of the biggest things here is always a speed versus fuel mileage. You can always go fast around here, but you have to make fuel mileage. We're going to cover that throughout the event. First-time starters, there's 12 first-time IndyCar starters here. Take into account that with the transitioning drivers and all the traffic that's going to be out there. I spoke to drivers, and they say it's going to be a hairy race here today. And you know something? First-time Kansas winner, 7 different winners here in 7 different races. Will we see an 8th different winner here today, or will we see a repeat winner? It's going to be a great event, Marty.
And the lights are out on the pace car as they head towards turn number 3. Here are the track facts at Kansas Speedway, as it is a 1.5-mile oval, 55 feet wide. And you see the length of the front straights, the bankings in the turns. Now, last year, the pit window, we saw cars go as far as 50 laps. As we get ready, pit lane is not seeing any activity now as we're green here at Kansas. Spin in the back of the field. It looks like it's only one car involved. And was that the 36 of Enrique Bernoldi?
Marty, when you spin around like that, you can point the car in the correct direction and put it back in gear and get going. You know how hard that is to find your bearings going when you're already doing 150 miles an hour? Some great driving there.
So we have our first caution already here at Kansas Speedway, and you see the damage on Bernoldi's left front wing. It's askew, and the nose has got it stubbed as well. We have one view from the same long distance shot that we had. Watch the back.
On the very back there, the back end just comes around on him. The left front wheel, he's going to have suspension damage when it hits the barrier itself. Did damage the wing and the nose. Now Enrique qualified 25th, so he was clear in the back, and you can see the damage there on the nose.
Vince?
Right now, they've changed the 4 tires, and they've also got to do some front end repair. Obviously, they've got a substitute nose that they're going to put on the front of the car. Jason Beck, the chief mechanic on this Eric Bernoldi team. This is a team that felt as though they had some possibilities in regards to improving on their position from Homestead. At Homestead, this team was 18th. They had a mechanical issue, so they really wanted to have an improved performance today. Off to a tough start. Jack?
Vince, this is not what Target Chip Ganassi wanted for the beginning of the race. I talked to Mike Hull. Now remember, Mike Hull is a very cerebral guy, and one of the things that he likes to do is run proactively how he thinks the race will be run. Here, unlike Homestead, unlike Miami, unlike Japan, Mike Hull looked at the past races here and said, Jack, I think what we need to do is not lay back. We've got to try and take our 2 cars and create just as much distance as we can from the rest of the field. He explained to me it's not about Danica Patrick, it's not about Thomas Scheckter, it's about getting as big a lead as possible early on. A dramatic change, guys, from what the conventional wisdom is at most mile-and-a-halves.
Well, it will be interesting. Pit lane is still closed. Don't know if anybody will come in and top off. After all, we're just working lap 4 of 200. Those that moved up, we should point out, Marco Andretti has moved up 3 spots. He started to well back in this field. And also, looks like there's Marco, as you can see. As he has moved up, as we said, 3 spots. Those that are going in reverse, Ryan Briscoe dropped 4 positions from his starting position.
Now, Marty, for guys like Marco Andretti, who, as you mentioned, started 14th and moved up a few spots, this yellow helps him just a little bit because it does not allow the leaders to spread out in those first couple of laps as he's trying to maneuver through traffic. So what he'll have to do now is get the timing right on the restart. Remember, on the start itself, you cannot pass a car until you get to the start line. On a restart, as soon as it goes green, no matter where you are on the racetrack, you can then start passing vehicles. So he'll listen on the radio from a spotter for the command for green, 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 and it's up to him to have perfect timing to then get back to work and start passing the cars in front.
And there's Ryan Briscoe right behind him. Briscoe started 9th, as we said. It fell off quickly. And obviously talking a little bit more about Marco coming off the last 2 races where he crashed in the very first lap of the first turn at Twin Ring Motegi. I mean, he manned up, took responsibility for both of them at St. Pete and in Motegi, but he needs to finish a race right here.
Well, the championship is starting to stretch out of space for him right now, but, you know, it was nice for him to get out of the car, admit a mistake, and just move forward. You get a lot of respect from your team when you get out of the car and say, you know something, I did something wrong.
All right, well, let's reset the top 4 for you, because it's Dixon, Schechter, he moved up from 4th. Dan Weldon is 3rd. Danica Patrick is 4th. But we caught Danica on the radio about maybe the tactics that Thomas used to get there.
I think that that was probably some unnecessary closeness on the front straight with Schechter. He put me below the white line. I'd let an official know right away on this first start, because Schechter's going to drive like this, like he's proven something all day.
All right, let's go back and show you the replay. Now, she's talking about forcing her down below the white line.
The second line of cars, the black and yellow car on the top side, Thomas Schechter, he gets to start through the tri-oval. Now, he sees that he's in front of her. Does he think that he's actually got all the way past her? Well, the way the rules are written, she started 3rd. She's supposed to go across the start-finish line, which she's coming up to right now, with her car leading, but Schechter beats her to the stripe, puts her down off the white line just a little bit, and you know something, smart move by her, because no time to go out fighting at this point in line on lap 1.
All right, a lot of the cars that came in were those that were at the back of this field. Nobody that was up front, as we are working lap 7 now of 200. But those in the back taking advantage of the situation, topping off, puts them out of sequence, but it may pay dividends later.
Well, a fuel strategy situation here. You're going to get yourself about another 6 to 8, maybe 9 laps longer than the group that stayed out on the racetrack. Maybe you catch a yellow at the correct timing out there. If something happens on track again and you get to pit underneath yellow at a slower pace. Always an advantage if you can time it right.
Some of the drivers that did pit there was Will Power and our EJ Vizo, also Justin Wilson. So a number of the guys that have come over from Champ Car taking advantage of the situation, topping off. So we're getting word from officials that this time by we will go back to green flag racing. So let's reset it for you again. It is Scott Dixon leading, Thomas Schechter 2nd, Dan Weldon 3rd, Danica Patrick 4th, and AJ Foyt the 4th, 5th. And that was the positions when they were frozen, when they went yellow. Coming out of turn number 4, we are back to green flag racing here at Kansas.
Great timing by Schechter.
Going down the back straightaway. Boy, a lot of slicing and dicing between cars. Everybody seems to make it through okay this time. Let's go on board with Vitor Meira. That is Elio Castroneves right in front of him. That's 7th place, looking at 6th.
Keep your foot on the gas all the way through the turn. Opens up that low side, and sure enough, what's going to end up happening, Tony Kanaan is going to look on the inside of Vitor Meira.
Let's get an update on Elio Castroneves, Jack.
This has not been a good weekend for the points leader, Elio Castroneves. He and his team, as he continues to go wheel to wheel with Thomas Schechter during that battle, he had a problem all during qualifying. They have been running flat out all the way around and not had the speed that they wanted. They started this race, guys, with an unknown quantity. That was how they were going to keep up with the front of the pack.
Well, he's doing so far so good. He just got around Ed Carpenter. He's now got AJ Foyt the 4th setting his gun sights as they come past the finish line. And we're working now lap 12 of 200. And Foyt's got the low line, so he's going to force Elio to do it on the high side.
Even though you didn't qualify as great as you might wanted to, the most important thing, though, on a race day is to get your car working in traffic, as we see Castroneves now trying to go on the high side of AJ the 4th. What happens in traffic is the car in front punches a hole in the air for you. It allows your car to go maybe a little quicker than it would do by itself, and a masterful driver like Castroneves will work that draft to his advantage.
Castroneves qualified 8th, his teammate Ryan Briscoe 9th. That gives you an idea how far Team Penske was in the qualifying order. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, you go on board with Ed Carpenter as he's trying to track down Castroneves once again.
Now Castroneves will try the high line again. You'll have to watch the low side because Carpenter will be there to fill it and take the spot away from him.
Jack, you got more on Elio?
Yeah, Marty, as we watch from on board the Menard Special, Elio has just been informed by his tactician, Tim Cindric, to get in line, get in line. Already you're beginning to get a sense that maybe what they want to do is not let the lead pack get away and try and save some precious ethanol.
Well, and that is what is happening. I mean, the front group has opened up almost a 3/4 of a second lead over this battle right here between these three cars. And here comes Carpenter again to force the issue as they go down the backstretch. Castroneves still running the high side. So while all this goes on, it is Scott Dixon, and he has now led in 4 of his 6 starts here at Kansas. His best finish is 4th. Will he change that today?
Fans starting to celebrate an impressive win. What a dominating performance it has been. Dan Weldon, the Englishman, will win once again, and he becomes the 7th different winner in 7 IndyCar Series events to win at Kansas Speedway. Dan Weldon has won the Kansas Lottery Indy 300.
That was just 1 year ago, and Dan Weldon, in his 3 years, has led over half of the laps run here at Kansas. You see the total, 333. Thomas Scheckter is number 2 on that list. He likes this track as well, and on down through the line. And Scott Dixon right now is adding more to that total. We can tell you, while we were in break, it was Dan Weldon getting around Thomas Scheckter to take over 2nd place. Let's take it back and show you.
I watched this outside the window here for quite a few laps, and Weldon was doing a good job sizing up the 12 car of Thomas Scheckter to see where he was weak, kept on working on him, and finally got the pass done. And I'm sure there's some team orders now up front to run nose to tail to start saving a little bit of fuel, because fuel will be crucial in this race here today, Marty.
Well, and Jack Arute, this is what we thought might happen, because Target Ganassi Racing unloaded very fast, and they have been fast all weekend long, and now they're running 1-2.
And Marty, as I said at the top of the show, this is according to plan. They want to run away in this long stint and try and put as much distance between themselves and the rest of the competition. But Dan Weldon may have a lucky charm riding along with it. When he won 1 year ago, his now wife, Susie, picked out the rental car. It was a gold one, so when they landed at Kansas City, a yellow, we'll finish the story later.
And we have a crash in turn 2. As one car has hit the wall hard.
Will Power by the looks of it.
And it is Will Power. Our winner last week at Long Beach is not going to finish here today at Kansas Speedway. So on lap 24, our 2nd caution comes out as Will Power tags the turn 2 wall. Delphi safety team already on the scene. Will looks to be okay. The wheel is off. Let's go back and take another look.
So you can start to see he was on the low side of the racetrack. We don't have it early enough for you, but he had already started to lose control. So there is a hinge point down there on the white line by the banking, and he certainly could have caught that with the left-hand wheels if... there we go. Oh, you know what? Just coming up behind Darren Manning just a bit too fast, because Darren Manning had a reported problem of a wiggle, was trying to probably get to the next yellow flag scenario. And what Will Power did, got boxed in on the low side, took his foot off the gas to avoid hitting the 14 car, and the back end gets light, starts to come around with you. So just probably a learning mistake on racing on ovals, something he's not had that much experience with.
And we talk about momentum going into the month of May at Indianapolis. This is not what KV Racing would want for their Long Beach winner.
But you know something, I've spoken to him quite a few times, very focused, and a guy that will just understand what he needs to do for Indy.
Well, we want to welcome everybody on ESPN2 as obviously the golf tournament went long between Annika Sorenstam and Paula Kramer, and Annika crunches again in the extra holes, and congratulations to her. I'm Marty Reed along with Scott Goodyear. Down in pit lane, we've got Jack Arute, Vince Welch, Brianne Pettigo. We're glad that you're with us. We're under our 2nd caution as Will Power tagged the turn 2 wall. And let's check in now with Jack Arute.
The winner 1 week ago at Long Beach, Mark Johnson, calls the shots for this team, for the Aussie Vineyards team. You told me before the race this is not what you wanted to have as the end result here.
No, absolutely not, Jack. It's not what we were looking for. We obviously need as much track time as we can get for Will to get our experience on the ovals. But, you know, unfortunately those things happen, and And, you know, we'll pick up and go to Indy next week. We've got to be on track a week from today for a rookie orientation, so I'm sure we'll be there. This whole Aussie Vineyard team's done a great job up to this point.
Perseverance continues, but guys, it's going to get crazy down here. As soon as the pits open, most of your leaders are coming in.
And we have been told that they will open the pits this time by, and we'll have our ethanol triple pits set up and ready to go. Right now it will be Scott Dixon leading the way, as he has led every lap so far here in today's race. The first man to hit his box will be Thomas Scheckter, because he's near pit in, and that means we'll send it to Brienne Pettigo.
Marty Thomas is just pulling in as we speak. Fuel and tires are expected to be the only additions to this car. Oh my God, someone was just hit.
Marty Roth.
Marty Roth just ran into Simon Morley, the crew chief of Thomas Scheckter. But he actually hit the crew chief for Thomas Schecter's car, Simon Morley.
So now they will continue the work, and we'll get an update as soon as we can on Simon's condition. They're trying to get Roth's car out of the way. This is, oh, no, and then a slug on the helmet. That won't go over well with race officials and probably team members as well. They'll try and get Marty refired and back into the race. Take a look at the race off pit road. AJ Foyt, the fourth, picks up 3 spots. Danica loses 3, dropping down to 7th. So we'll wait and shake it all out for you, and they'll take another look at this. As here's what happened, and watch the right front.
He just gets him by the wing. Thank goodness he didn't get hit by the nose. And I spoke to Simon last night here. They were very excited about what was going on. Great experience, Formula 1 experience. He's been in the pit lane all over the world, and he probably knows exactly what happened there.
We've got one more look at it. Get this angle.
Here's a situation where Marty Roth just comes in a bit too hot. The back end locks up, and Simon gets away with it. Look how dedicated he is. He picks up the wheel that got knocked Marty, and he's going back to put it on the front of the car.
Let's get more from Brienne.
Marty, I just spoke with Simon. He is obviously very shaken up. He says he's okay. He went over and had a few words with Dave Cripps over at Marty Roth's camp, a former co-worker of his, but he is okay, just extremely shaken up at this time.
Well, a very tough break for the Luxo Dragon Racing team, as they were running extremely well. Now, we are going to take a break. We're going to say goodbye to all of you on ESPN Classic. Invite you to come over to ESPN2 for the duration of our race. We'll go side by side here at Kansas Speedway. ESPN's presentation of the IndyCar 300 at Kansas, brought to you by Firestone, the first name in Indy racing, and in part by Honda, sole engine supplier for the IndyCar series. Under our second caution here at Kansas Speedway with a great crowd, and there is Simon, and it looks like everything is a-okay. Let's take a look. There was a second incident which brought the head slap. Watch here.
Well, exactly what's going on. The guys from Schecter's crew are trying to help push Marty's car back, and Marty starts to roll forward, runs over the crewman's foot, and I think he just took his frustration and anger just out on Marty.
All right, so now I understand now that will be black flagged after the restart, and it will be held in pit lane for 30 seconds. So that will basically put them a lap down as we get ready to go back to green flag racing. And looks like Simon's none the worse for wear. Could have been a very dangerous situation, but luckily everybody seems to be a-okay. Let's reset this for you as we get ready to go green flag racing. Justin Wilson is your race leader. Now remember, Justin pitted earlier in the race when we had our first caution. So now he has got the race lead. Scott Dixon is second. AJ Foyt, the fourth, is third. Dan Weldon is fourth. Ed Carpenter fifth. Elio Castroneves is sixth. Here we go. We're back to green, and Dixon wants the lead right back.
A lot of experience with Scott Dixon on ovals and restarts, and it's going to be tough for Justin Wilson to be able to stay out there in the lead on the restart. That was for sure.
Well, and remember, his tires are 25 laps older than that of the race leader, Scott Dixon's. A lot of action going on behind. Here comes Scheckter again as we go on board with Weldon.
Well, Schecter's back in 22nd, because remember, he went from 3rd to 22nd on that pit lane incident. So he's now going to have to move himself up all the way through. It'll be a great ride for Thomas because you know he's got a long distance in front of him to watch some great battling going on between the Andretti Green teammates.
That's Marco Andretti, left side of your screen now in the 26 car, and he gets around Danica Patrick. So punch Danica back into the 9th position as Andretti gets around. And Vince, what's the latest from Danica's pit?
Well, they did make a chassis adjustment when she came into the pits. She lost 3 spots on that pit stop, mainly because when she came into the pit box, she came in crooked, so it got a little bit of a slow start in regards to the crew making the chassis adjustments and the tire changes. But as far as Danica's car is concerned, a little bit of understeer, but as they advised her just a few moments ago, it's early in the race. Be patient, be calm.
Well, we just heard her have to lift coming out of 4, and that allowed Tony Kanaan to get around her on the high side. So bump her back another position.
Something not happy with the race car is the reason why you get on the gas. It looks like a little bit of a wiggle mid-turn on the lower side of the track there for her again as she's trying to defend her position. But whatever they've done with the car, it's not working well for her. She's fighting the steering wheel, Marty, and she'll be telling the crew back there, hey, whatever changes we did from that first pit stop are not working out right now at this juncture in the fuel stop. Maybe the car might come back to her as she starts to get the tires up to temperature and pressure, and the fuel builds off. We'll have to watch this for her.
Mira is up to 10th, bumped Danica back to 11th. We talked to Michael Andretti about the significance, the historical impact of last week's win.
I think this win's going to be really good for Danica. I think it's going to be it's going to basically relax her. You know, I think she's had so much pressure, not from the outside, but I think from herself. You know, that you know, it's just been really tough on her. And I think, you know, now it's a huge monkey off of her back, and I think now she can start to hopefully have a little more fun.
She's not having much fun right now. She's got her hands full. That's EJ Viso, the rookie, on the high side, and he's trying to take another position away from her here on the lap 38.
Now, with EJ not having much oval experience, he's not noticing that Danica's car wants to go high. He tried to go around the high side. An experienced oval racer would know that she's having understeer. Her car is walking up the racetrack. Then you would start to look to go underneath that car as he's starting to do now. You don't want to be on the high side when a car in front of you is having a push situation. They're just a great chance of taking you out because they need the high line on the exit of the turn.
Take a look at the 12 car back there also. Thomas Schechter, he's moved his way back up to 13th as he is fighting his way back. The 17 there is Ryan Hunter-Reay. So as you see all this action going on, Scott Dixon continues to lead his teammate Dan Weldon by a half a second. Ed Carpenter has moved up into 3rd, and that's the yellow car I saw originally thinking that was Schechter, and there he is. As from the back it looked similar, so we'll make sure that Ed gets all the credit that he is due, as this team has really been running stronger and stronger every race this season. So as Scott Dixon continues to lead, the yellow car tries to track down the 2 red cars. Scott Dixon, your race leader, here as we go side by side. Major League Baseball continues tonight. The Tigers host the Angels. Sunday Night Baseball presented by Taco Bell on ESPN. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern. Then tomorrow night, Yankees take on Cleveland and the Indians. Monday Night Baseball at 7 p.m. Eastern at 2 on ESPN and ESPN HD. Back here at the Kansas Speedway, we are working lap 45 of 200. Scott Dixon is your race leader. Dan Weldon is in 2nd. Ed Carpenter 3rd. His Vision Racing teammate, AJ Foyt the 4th, is 4th. Elio Castroneves is now 5th. Tony Kanaan is in 6th. And you can see the top 3 have opened up about a 2.5 second lead over the 2nd group.
Well, all 3 of those are running over 210 miles an hour average consistently, with Ed Carpenter turning in 211.3, taking a little bit of advantage of the draft of those 2 cars up in front that are helping poke a hole in the air for him. But the other thing he needs to do is try to get up just a little bit closer to those 2 so he maybe start to save some fuel, which would be beneficial as the race continues.
Brienne, you've got more on Ed Carpenter?
Marty, Ed is starting to play with his fuel mixtures to help him catch the leader, and it is paying off for this Menards number 20 car. I asked Ed earlier in the week to what he would attribute the success this team has had this year versus last year, and he said the biggest benefit benefit they've seen is from going from a 3-car team to a 2-car team. They've really been able to scale down and really focus in on each problem on each car. But Ed summed it up best. He said yesterday that you know you're on the right track when you can be disappointed in qualifying 6th.
Good point, very good point. And they are very high. Remember, they were shooting for a podium finish back at Motegi. Maybe today they get it one race later.
Well, Ed said this morning that he expects that they should be on the podium. Will be disappointed if he's not, but both those cars have run so strong. Remember at Homestead earlier on, they turned around and they were both up there in qualifying, had a miscue with the after-tech situation after qualifying, got pushed back, but they've been strong since the beginning of the season.
And we push back a little further in the field, and we got a battle going on. You can see that's A.J. Foyt, the 4th in the 2-car, and the high side in the 11. That is Tony Kanaan. Let's get more from Vince Welch.
Tony Kanaan started 11th today. He had serious issues yesterday in practice. In fact, got very few practice laps. His longest run, in fact, came during qualifying when he ran 4 consecutive qualifying laps. But they've made a chassis adjustment and a tire pressure adjustment on that first stop, and his car has come alive. He's up now into the top 5, battling for that 5th spot.
Well, interesting note also, when we were speaking with Tony this morning, he said because of those lack of laps, he's gone ahead and put on Danica's setup. All the information they took from Danica's car for wings and springs and shocks, and have using that here today, which is pretty impressive. Danica's come a long way in a few years on setting up a race car.
Right now, Danica running in 14th position, though, going in the wrong direction. They're going to have to make an adjustment on that car. Meanwhile, no such problems up front for the race leader. As this battle continues, and we'll keep an eye on it, want to check in with Jack Arute about the strategy for those 2 cars in the Ganassi camp.
They would like to be where they are right now, but Mike Hall noticed that the teammate to Scott Dixon, directly behind the Target Chip Ganassi car, the one with the red end plates and number 10, right there, Dan Weldon, the defending champion. Well, he is faster, and I wanted to finish that story about Weldon. When he won last year, his now wife Susie chose their rental car. It was a gold one. He went to Victory Lane. When they landed at KCI Airport earlier this week, he went to his now wife Susie and said, all right, this is going to make the difference. Which car do you want? They were at the National Lot. She looked at a gold car. She looked at a blue car. She said, I'll take the white one. He says, it better be right. I want to go to Victory Lane again. We'll have to wait and find out.
All right, thanks, Jack. That's Enrique Bernoldi that they are going around right now, putting him a lap down. And he has got Ed Carpenter coming on the high side, so everybody clears. The top 3 continue. There's your top 5 as we go side by side at Kansas. And of course, that's from last week at Twin Ring Motegi, but right now, Danica Patrick is not feeling very super. They have got to make some adjustments on that car. She has gone backwards, as you can see. Started 3rd, currently 13th. That's minus 10 in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, there's a great battle going on. As you can see, A.J. Foyt, the 4th, and Tony Kanaan still going after each other. But give a tip of the hat to the 33 car just a few spots back, E.J. Vizo. He's running in the 8th position, started 17th. He's picked up 9 big ones. There he is. He's closing on Team Penske. And remember, Vince Welch, this is one of the guys that has very, very few laps on an oval.
In fact, it's just his 2nd oval race ever. He made his oval debut earlier this season at Miami. Homestead, remember, he had a pretty good run going there until a late crash sent him to a 17th place finish. Not indicative of the quality of run that he had there at Homestead. He's fighting a little bit of a handling issue right now, but his team is reminding him to use the weight jackers. But so far, they're very pleased with the way E.J. Vizo has taken this car toward the front.
And he gets around the lap traffic there. The 19 of Mario Marias. Marias, miraculous that he was even in the race. They had a practice crash that just about destroyed everything on the car. They got it built and packed together just before we went to the starting grid. Meanwhile, as you see Vizo closing in on A.J. Foyt, the 4th, that will be for 6th position. Vizo is now 7th. Another guy we've got to point out is just a few cars back, as that's Darren Manning getting passed quickly by Foyt. We're going to drop back just a little bit more. There is Thomas Scheckter. He has picked up now 21, or he started 21st on the restart. He has picked up 11 spots back in the top 10.
That was back in lap 26, so now in lap 38, he's making a march towards the front. He's going to need a little help with yellows if he can do that to pack up this group again, because the leaders are quite a ways out in front of him. But the most important thing is to keep that car going strong underneath him, make some changes during the next pit stop to make it stronger. Track conditions will change here as the race continues on, and we think we see a situation with Danica. They made some changes during the pit stop, and doesn't look like those changes agreed with her, so they will probably go back and make some more changes to see if they can fix that.
So we have about 9 more laps until we'll start the second round of pit stops. Meanwhile, that's Milka Dunno in the 23 being put a lap down by our race leader, Scott Dixon. He started on pole. He has been in control. Dan Weldon, his teammate, is right behind him after 66 laps. Well, the NASCAR Nationwide Series will be at Richmond on ESPN2 Friday night. Coverage begins with NASCAR Countdown at 7 p.m. Eastern. That should be a dandy. 3/4 mile bull ring of Richmond. Back here at Kansas Speedway, it is still Scott Dixon by half a second over his teammate at the Ganassi Racing, Dan Weldon. Ed Carpenter is third, and Thomas Scheckter, 47 laps ago he pitted, and he is in pit lane again. Hopefully nobody gets run over this time. And looks like a very nice 4-tire stop. No adjustments to the wing. Remember, Thomas was back in 21st after the mishap. And we're getting word now that Tony Kanaan is pulling into pit lane. So everybody's got the wick turned up a little bit, as we're not getting quite as many laps as we saw last year. And Vince, Tony's heading your way.
Well, the real issue for Kanaan so far, since they made those adjustments to the car and it really came alive on that second stint, has been a radio problem. He has not been able to communicate with the people in the pit lane. So Kanaan communicates with his spotter, and the spotter communicates with the pit lane. It's been a tough way to go, but it's certainly been a successful run so far. Brianne?
Ed Carpenter just pulling into his pit spot as we speak. No changes for him right now on this car. They have a very good car. Very, very happy.
And while you were talking about Ed Carpenter and they're getting him back out, you saw the end result of Milka Dunno spinning on pit lane. They'll turn her around and take care of service. Luckily, it doesn't look like anybody got hit. And meanwhile, as they continue to work their way back to the pit, here comes Ryan Briscoe down pit lane here on lap 77 of 200 at Kansas Speedway. And there's your race leader, Scott Dixon. So Dixon is finally coming. He did make 50 laps, as he will make it into pit lane. And we'll send it to Jack Arute as he and Dan Weldon come in together, Jack.
It's not quite Dancing with the Stars, but it is a 2-car tango, as the Target Chip Ganassi team will pit in tandem. They want to stay hooked up in the draft. No major changes anticipated for either. 22 gallons of ethanol to go in both tanks. Also, a change of Firestone Firehawk tires. Now, but it will be a tight formation flying back out onto the racetrack. Will it be Weldon or will it be Dixon, guys?
Well, as that continues to be sorted out, there's Danica Patrick, and they're arguing about it between the teammates, and it looks like Dixon is going to be the man that gets out in front. And let's get an update on Danica's position as she almost gets run over. Vince?
Again, they made a wing adjustment. She was really complaining in that second stint about having no grip in traffic, so hopefully they fixed it as she's gone from the front toward the back.
Elio Castroneves getting his second round pit stop taken care of as they're making the 4-tire change.
Most important, we heard Danica wanted some more changes on the race car. You have to make sure you communicate with the team back in pit lane throughout the complete run to tell them what the car is doing. You have to make the car the best it can be for that last pit stop when you put on tires and add a little bit of fuel to get that run down to the end. The good drivers will be able to communicate the information that they need so the engineers can understand what kind of changes they have to make for that last stop, Marty.
So now, as you listen to the radio, we can tell you that all the pit stops have cycled through for our race leaders. We have 17 cars on the lead lap here at lap 80. And it is Scott Dixon in front of Dan Weldon, Ed Carpenter, Ryan Briscoe in fourth. Tony Kanaan is in fifth. As we're back at Kansas Speedway, you see our race leader. That is Scott Dixon in front of Dan Weldon, the man who won this race last year. And let's check our Firestone lap leaderboard. And if you've been with us throughout the duration when we started on ESPN Classic and now on ESPN2. Yeah, it's no surprise. Scott Dixon has led 77 of those laps and is in control except for one guy, his teammate, as these two have been impressive all weekend long. They are a full half a second ahead of Ed Carpenter in third, Ryan Briscoe in fourth, and Tony Kanaan in fifth. And that is Mario Moraes going another lap down. As we pointed out earlier, Moraes was just lucky to make the start of this race after a pretty wicked crash. Take a look at what happened earlier in the race. That was Will Power as he came up on Darren Manning and ended up into the wall. And I believe Jack Root has caught up with him as we take a second look.
Marty, indeed we have, and this is the first chance that Will has gotten to be able to see the video coverage of the accident. Will, did that help you understand a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think Manning was slowing up, and I got caught out on the inside, and I wasn't sure if Milka was on the outside, so I didn't want to run high, run her in the wall. I just took the air away and whipped round.
You've won the finale at Long Beach. You've already an IndyCar winner this season, but what does this do to your preparations for the big one coming up, the Indianapolis 500?
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, I haven't finished an oval yet, so I need to learn to run in traffic, and, you know, I should have backed off. If you need to look far ahead in this racing.
Fellas, one thing to keep in mind, at least in Indianapolis, you've got 2 full weeks of practice and qualifications. This guy might be able to learn how to get around an oval by then.
And rookie orientation is next Sunday, 1 week from today at the Speedway. All right, as we check back up front, that takes a look at the teammates. Marco Andretti in the 26, Danica Patrick in the 7. That is for battle for position. And Danica is in now 8th position. Marco listed in 9th, and right behind them is E.J. Vizo in 10th. Boy, Vizo is having a very, very good run here in his second oval start. Take a look at our Firestone telemetry on Danica Patrick.
100% throttle is what you need to see, and that's exactly what she's doing. Probably made some changes during that last pit stop, which we mentioned that they had to do. Improve the car. She had a great car for qualifying, not a bad car for the first stint. And then now she gets the situation where she can improve it. They do have some adjustments inside the car, some weight jacker adjustments and also roll bar adjustments to improve the handling. But sometimes the things that the engineers decide to do on the car during the pit stop really make the difference, Marty.
Well, and we can show you the dividends because the adjustments they made have helped. She is running, her last lap was actually 2/10 quicker than our race leader, Scott Dixon. So they've made the right adjustment. Now she's got to fight her way back. While all this action continues, there is our race leader, Scott Dixon. Now his lead over teammate Dan Weldon, that's what 0.3 of a second looks like on the racetrack. And Ryan Hunter-Reay has made his way into the pits, and they've got a lot of work going on. Let's get more from Brianne Pettigo.
Marty, Ryan Hunter-Reay was quickly dropping back on the racetrack. That's because he lost 5th gear completely, started to feel a terrible vibration in the car. They brought him in, parked him, decided to go ahead and swap out the entire stack in the car and then see if they could get him back out on the racetrack.
So a tough break for Ryan Hunter-Reay, and that's not the kind of momentum that we talk about. You want to take into Indianapolis for the month of May, but as we said, it's a long 3 weeks once they get started. Meanwhile, up front, there continues to be the battle between the two leaders, and they're not really battling. They're basically running in lockstep. And then let's go back a little bit further. It's now 7 seconds back to third of that bright yellow Menards car. That's Ed Carpenter. He's got Ryan Briscoe right behind him. That will be a battle for position for the 3rd spot on the track. And Tony Kanaan, another couple of tenths behind that, as he's trying to reel those two guys in.
And this is a great run for Ryan Briscoe. As we see now, Ed Carpenter's starting to go around some traffic. You know, and Ed himself has been improving on ovals all the way through. And Ryan Briscoe, who's chasing him, has not really had that much experience on ovals himself. He's really a sports car racer, was with the Penske racing operation last year in the American Le Mans series with sports cars, and he said he just wants to finish an oval race because he's not had much luck so far this year in getting to the finishing line in any of the races that we've had.
And Ryan Briscoe right behind him, of course, has not been the kind of season he has wanted after the 2 crashes at the first 2 races. Let's get more from pit lane.
Marty, a lot like Will Palmer, Ryan Briscoe just wants to finish an oval race, but it looked as if he was going to face more than his share of challenges early on in the first 2 practice sessions. A wiring issue in the entire car's wiring loom set this car and their practice time back. In fact, they tried to isolate the problem, had to replace the wiring loom. We're actually still plugging things in when he was firing the car up to go out to qualify. Thus far, all of the telemetry, all of the onboard computers, and most importantly, the dash readout, Scott Goodyear, is working for Ryan Briscoe. So they must have found the problem in the wiring harness.
Gives confidence to the driver. Because
we've got a yellow. We've got a crash. Oh, an EJ Vizo, and it looks like Thomas Scheckter involved. And Schecter's got damage to the right front suspension. I don't know. I think Vizo may be able to continue. They both continued through the infield. Scheckter has come to a stop. Meanwhile, Vizo is continuing to drive in the grass. There he is. He looks none the worse for wear if he can get out without spinning it. So we have our 3rd caution. Let's take a look and see if we can see what happened.
So you see the cars in the back. EJ Vizo is on the bottom side, gets up. It looks like Thomas Scheckter touch. The right rear of Vizo ends up hitting the front suspension of Thomas Schecter's machine and breaks the suspension of Thomas's car by the looks of it. Now that looks like they were both just going for the same piece of real estate. Now let's watch again. Thomas and the 12 machine going by on the high side. Both of them not leaving enough room for each other. Looks like EJ just starting to work the car up the racetrack a little bit more than possibly he could have done. He need to hold it down on the bottom side. But when he's starting to get past like that, Marty, the thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to take your foot off the gas. Now let's watch as we're riding along from Vitor Mira's car. And you can see the 33 of EJ Vizo just go up the road just a little bit, just enough to make contact with Thomas Schecter's machine.
And that we had rain here last night, and that is a very soggy infield, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to get him out of there without a tow truck. And there is Vizo. He's still out there. I'm sure that Thomas is not going to be pleased with the move. For Thomas, it was his 7th start here. His best finish was 5th last year, or best was 5th last year, and again in 05. He led 101 laps back in 2002, but did not win that race.
Looks like he's broken a suspension piece or possibly the toe link, because there's a lot of toe out on the front wheels right now. And for Thomas, I saw him earlier this year at Mark Dismore's Newcastle go-kart track, just on the outskirts of Indianapolis, and he was out there running his go-karts and running in classes. Has already won out there in his tag senior class this year. He said, I just want to make sure I get as many miles in as possible before going to Indianapolis. Doesn't matter what I'm driving, go-karts will do the trick.
All right, we've just passed the halfway point of this race. It has been 23 laps since our race leader, Scott Dixon, pitted. We have 14 cars on the lead lap. What do you do as far as strategy? Are you going to stop now, or are you going to stretch it?
Well, when you're just past halfway, you know you're not going to make it in one more stop, so you probably take advantage of running underneath yellow. It'll be interesting to see if that's what the engineers and management do of the leading teams, and bring their guys in underneath this yellow, since it's been 23 laps. I mean, I think I would go ahead and do that, and we're going to wait to see what all the teams decide to do.
We can tell you that Justin Wilson has gotten back onto the lead lap because of his out-of-sequence strategy and the timing of this yellow. So he is the 14th car on the lead lap. So we'll have our triple pits set up for you, and Ed Carpenter will be making his way down, trying to figure out how he can make up the difference. Here are our ethanol triple pits. That bright yellow Menards machine, not hard to find at all. And Carpenter will be the first one in, and we'll see how quickly the guys can take 4 tires and a full load of ethanol for the Menards, number 20. Clock running at 5, 6, 7 seconds. Let's go to the other end of pit lane, Jackaroo.
Your lead team target Chip Ganassi, Scott Dixon, and Dan Weldon. Dixon is the first off the marks, and followed by Weldon as Carpenter tries to close from mid on the pit road. Scott, you were talking about what they wanted to do here. The reason why the Ganassi team pitted is because they are within the window of completing this race in 2 full stops. Why? Because remember, under these caution laps, these Honda engines are allowed to go on what we call alternating cylinders. they're able to go from 3 miles to the gallon, in some cases to 12 miles to the gallon. This puts them within one last stop for this race.
And Schechter's car is back in the pit lane. Brianne?
They are quickly trying to pull the car back into Schechter's pit stall. This is a team that is not giving up yet. They want to take a very clear look at this car, make sure it is in fact not raceable. Kevin Blanche, technical inspector for the league, is in Schechter's pit, ready to take a look at it. Thomas has not taken his helmet off yet. He is not throwing in the towel this easily. Vince?
And the car that he touched with, E.J. Viso, came into the pits as well. He had flat spotted the tires, but there was no other significant damage to the car, the 33 machine. E.J. Viso, a driver that started 17th here today, had worked his way up inside the top 10, was having an outstanding run. Looks like maybe they dodged a bullet here. No damage on that race car. They did make a front wing adjustment, however.
He did go a lap down, and problem with the number 4. Vitor Mira, the left front suspension is bent, the upper wishbone, and let's take a look, see if we can see what happened.
He's raising his hands like he's not clear on what happened, but here they just finished a pit stop. He leaves. It actually hits the front tire from the team up in front. Now, the ruling on that is that you have to stay within your pit box when you depart. If the other team's equipment is actually laid out and you hit it, it's their fault. If you've driven through their pit box and hit their equipment, then you are the one that's assessed the penalty. But regardless of whose fault it is, looks like Vitor's day is done.
And I'm hearing that was Buddy Rice's pit, so we'll now see what happens as that's John Barnes talking it over with his driver. Stay with us in Kansas. ESPN's presentation of the IndyCar 300 at Kansas is brought to you by Firestone, the first name in Indy racing, and in part by Samsung, touch of color HD TV. That's the skyline of Kansas City, Missouri, way off in the distance. Across the river, you come into the state of Kansas, and that's where we are at Kansas Speedway as we're getting ready to go back to green flag racing here. Just past the halfway mark. Let's reset it for you. There's your 2 race leaders. It's been Scott Dixon leading Dan Weldon most of the day. Tony Kanaan has fought his way to 3rd. There he is. Ryan Briscoe is 4th. Ed Carpenter is 5th. And you heard the call. We're green. Boy, Dixon, he's got a rocket ship.
Oh, well, actually, Dan Weldon was trying to get the jump on Dixon, and he hung up on the high side. Didn't get it timed right. The number 10 machine allowed the 711 machine of Tony Kanaan, the green and white machine, to go through on the bottom side.
And here come the 2 Penske cars trying to get underneath Weldon as well. He's all alone out there now on the high side of the racetrack. That's Elio Castroneves. He can't get the job done, though, as Weldon holds him off. Meanwhile, Brianne Pettigo has caught up with Vitor Mira.
Vitor, we saw a bit of a heated discussion there between your team and that of Buddy Rice, who's in the pit stall right in front of yours. Can you explain what happened?
My first pit stop, I asked the right rear guy to be aware that I was here, and he was laying his tire 2-way away from Buddy's right rear. First pit stop, second pit stop, third pit stop, I finished. For some reason, I hit him, but his tire was way out. I mean, which is a shame because the Delphi National Guard car was having a very good run. We were there, top 10, solid, saving fuel. Because of stupid thing, because of stupid action, put us out of the race.
How do you regroup? How do you regroup from here going into the month of May?
Same way we did from Japan to here. Keep our heads straight and then go.
Jackaroo?
Well, Brianne, one of the problems inside these cars is you really can't see that left or right front from sitting inside the cockpit. Why? Because the tub itself is solid, except for a new innovation that is only on the Roger Penske Team Penske cars with Briscoe and Castroneves. Take a look at a shot that we shot a little bit earlier today. You'll see a clear pane. What that allows the drivers to do is see things like what Vitor Mira was talking about. It also, fellas, allows them to see what the tire is doing in the corner. It also allows them as well to see the white line. Remember, there's a penalty here if you go under the white line. I'm going to call them the Penske panes.
All right, and it won't be long before everybody else has them. It's monkey see, monkey do in all of motorsports. Thanks, Jack, for the update. Meanwhile, you can see that the top 5 cars are trying to open up a bit of ground. It is Dixon, Weldon, Kanaan, Castroneves, and Briscoe. Ed Carpenter has fallen a full second behind this group.
Interesting to see the race pace after that last stop has slowed down about 2 miles an hour, running in the 2:09 range when we were running in the 2:11 range before. So maybe track conditions changing just a little bit. Maybe some people trying to save a little bit of fuel towards the end. They're throttling back, maybe with a fuel adjustment that's driver adjustable inside the cockpit. A little less fuel, a little less horsepower, a little less speed, Marty.
All of a sudden, Tony Kanaan slips back a little bit into the clutches of Helio Castroneves and Ryan Briscoe. Can they get it done? He had some kind of bobble because he was right up on the back deck wing of Dan Weldon, and then all of a sudden fell back, but they can't get it done. Let's get more from Jack Arute.
Marty and Scott, consider this. Remember, we told you this is now within the window of a one-stop race. For Dixon and Weldon, that's exactly according to plan. They knew that Castroneves and Brian Briscoe could not maintain the pace. So what they're trying to do is run as slowly as possible so they can short fill on their final pit stop. There's only one problem. The 7-Eleven car wants to supersize things. He's slurping up the differential right now.
Well, this is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. As there you see Tony Kanaan. He is in the 3rd position, about, well, 0.3 of a second behind the race lead.
And Tony's a very smart driver. We spoke to him this morning, as we said, and he said, I'm not sure what kind of race car I'm going to have. I'm going to put Danica's setup on it because we did not get much running in here the last couple of days. Very smart driver, probably just sitting back there in 3rd, saving a little bit of fuel by letting those 2 Target Chip Ganassi cars in front punch a hole in the air.
We need 3.
All right, let's get an update on Tony Kanaan from Vince Welch.
Well, Scott Goodyear hit the nail right on the head. Conserving some fuel, but keeping an eye on those 2 leaders as now Kanaan goes outside. With the thought being that if they're a little too conservative at the front, then he can go ahead and make his move. Otherwise, George Klotz, who handles the strategy for the 7-Eleven car, told me, we want to make it on one more stop, but we got to conserve a little fuel in the process.
And that's really done by 2 ways. The driver adjustable knob inside the cockpit that we talked about. There's full rich, and there's 3 settings for running a little bit leaner before you get to the yellow setting, and the drivers can run lean via that way, or also by using their throttle a little softly, going both into the turns and out of the turns if you have to lift off from the cars in front. That helps you save fuel. It's called balloon footing, basically, and just sort of trying to lead off the throttle from running full throttle just off a bit to help lower the RPMs and lower the consumption of fuel going into the engine.
Well, Tony Kanaan, as you see him trying to reel in the 2 race leaders from Ganassi Racing. No stranger to victory lane here at Kansas. One of the best finishes we've ever seen. That's 05 when Tony beat out, it was Vitor Meira right there as well, and he takes the 05 win here at Kansas. Here he is now on lap 121 as we're working it, as 200 and we get word that maybe Graham Rahal a lap ago may have come close to hitting the wall exiting turn 2. On board with Rahal right there, side by side with Justin Wilson, his teammate. And is this the replay? No, here is it. There we go. It's got Buddy Rice underneath him.
Car is working itself up into what we call the gray area. And boy, he did a great job with that. Now that causes some excitement. The heart rate goes up, your palms start to sweat just a little bit. And for Graham Rahal, who won the race in St. Pete's, remember he did not start at Miami because of a crash during practice, so he wants to finish here, Marty, to get some experience.
And this is a good run for these 2 guys. They are on the lead lap. Graham is 12th. Justin is 13th. They're 6 seconds behind the race leaders right now, and they are the last 2 on the lead lap. So a good run for that team. Major League Baseball continues tonight. The Tigers host the Angels. It's Sunday Night Baseball presented by Taco Bell. It's on ESPN. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern. Then tomorrow night, the Yankees take on the Tribe. Monday Night Baseball starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN and ESPN HD. All right, let's take it back a little while earlier in the race when this was the moment when E.J. Vizo in the 33 rides up the track and makes contact with Thomas Scheckter, putting him on the sidelines. Brienne Pettigo has caught up with Thomas.
Marty, Thomas just got a chance to see that for himself. Thomas, not the way you wanted your first race back to end. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, I think he came up a little bit on me, but you know, that's fine. We're not in the championship. I just want to thank Symantec for giving me a good car. I mean, for coming out here and getting a car 2 weeks ago to run that competitive, we're really happy. We learned some stuff for Indy. We can carry that on, be positive. We come out here with a good day.
You guys were quick all weekend long. That's got to give you confidence going into the month of May?
Absolutely, and we still got a lot of time for development. I'm just so proud of the guys, knowing what kind of job they done. A little disappointing finish, but we ran extremely quick laps. We qualified 4th. We ran up front with the Ganassis, and you know, give these guys a little bit of time. I'm looking forward to Indy.
Guys?
What do you think of this first time out effort for this team?
Very impressive, and I think everybody has to put him and the team on the radar screen at Indianapolis because he's always been competitive there. Remember, his first time there back with the Eddie Cheever team, he was leading and just made a mistake, and it cost him the Indianapolis 500 win. But every time he's gone there, he has been very competitive, and I'm going to put him on the short list for winners for this year, for the month of May.
All right, as we see the battles continuing out on the racetrack, time for our GoDaddy.com trivia question. And today, as you take a look at Scott Dixon in the race lead, how many tracks in the current IndyCar Series schedule have not had a repeat winner? And I should tell you that we already mentioned Kansas is 1, and Scott Dixon would not, he's never won here himself, so we could go 8 times here without a repeat winner. Here comes the answer. There are a total of 2. Kansas with 7 different winners so far, and Sonoma with 3. For more GoDaddy.com trivia, log on to ESPN.com/GoDaddy. Talk about the 7 different winners here at Kansas. Eddie Cheever, who will be joining Scott and me in the booth for the month of May in Indianapolis. We're looking forward to that. I think you guys are like yin and yang and water and oil, and this could be a lot of fun for me.
That's probably a good way to put it. I suspect so. You might have to be in the middle.
I'll have boxing gloves and helmets and all kinds of safety gear for me. We got to get out of here just for a moment. The race continues to unfold with Scott Dixon in control, but we've seen what's happened before. Stay with us. That's our Japanese counterparts last week at Motegi. I think those boys got to ramp it up a little bit. They aren't excited enough.
Now, you promised you were going to translate all that for me.
Yeah. Danica Patrick wins. Danica Patrick wins. All right. A moment ago, though, she had a little trouble out on the track. Take a look. That's Marco Andretti.
Up on the high side where all the rubber and the marbles are usually from the tire wear, and that's just a little bit too high. Anytime you're up in the gray, that's a no-no, and boy, she gets away with that.
And that's Hideki Muto that also gets around her, so 2 of her teammates. The 19 is several laps down. That's Mario Moraes.
Oh, she's fighting the steering wheel, and she was off the gas big time, Marty.
Let's check in with Vince Welch.
Well, after she won last week at Motegi, she got personal congratulation notes from Bernie Ecclestone, former presidents Clinton and Bush, but I don't think she's going to be getting any congratulatory notes today, other maybe than saving that last one, because as her spotter said, that was a real nice catch. I think in racer lingo, that was an accident that should have happened, but didn't. She's really been struggling with the car, particularly in traffic. They've been tweaking the front wing at each stop, but she's had a handful today. Certainly not the kind of car she had a week ago.
And Vince, as you were talking about that, we're watching the Firestone telemetry, and she was out of the throttle all the way down to 40% in the middle of the turn, and that's the things that makes the car go very slow. You have to keep your foot on the gas, Marty, all the way around if you're going to keep the speed up here to be able to run with the leaders.
And you did not hear Vince wrong. Bernie Ecclestone actually did send congratulatory note, and that is the same guy who said all women belong in the kitchen. All right, take a look now as we go back towards the front of the pack, and it is still Scott Dixon by that margin over his teammate, Dan Weldon. Tony Kanaan is running in third. Let's get a strategy update from pit lane. Jack Arute.
Fellas, the Team Ganassi cars are in their window for their final stop. Now what they're trying to do is log as many laps as possible so that they can short pit. What they've asked Scott Dixon to do is to try and keep the race pace just a little faster than it's been. He said, I can do that if you get to my teammate Weldon and ask him to push me. You'll notice that that's precisely what they've done. They've lengthened their distance over third and fourth. Brienne?
For Ed Carpenter and his Vision teammate AJ Foyt IV, their strategy involves simply fuel mapping. This team is taking full advantage of the fact that this year we can run different fuel mixtures once again. They're trying to see if they can make it in just one more stop, and this is one happy team.
Well, and we found out what caused him to pit so early at Motegi in that last run. They actually had a broken header, and that was causing a lot of fuel to be wasted.
Well, you know, we talked about on what to watch for, speed versus fuel mileage. There's no doubt these guys could turn the wick up and do 211s, 212s consistently, but you will not get the fuel mileage numbers that you need to run. So it's a bit of a game right now, and these guys are going to have to get to a lap 150, maybe 151 or 2 if they're going to try and make it on one more stop. Otherwise, we're going to see that race pace slow down a fair amount if it stays green all the way to lap 200.
The longest run has been 52 laps by 3 cars. The 26 of Marco Andretti, the 06 of Graham Rahal, and the 3 of Elio Castroneves. Everybody else has had to stop sooner than that. So the big magic number seems to be 52 to go. There's your top 5 here at Kansas. And the NASCAR Nationwide Series moves from Talladega to Richmond next week. You'll see it all on ESPN2 Friday night. Coverage begins with NASCAR Countdown at 7 p.m. Eastern. Back here at Kansas Speedway, we're getting ready for the final round of pit stops. This time by, we'll have 50 laps remaining. That should put everybody within the window to be able to make it on one stop. It has been all about Scott Dixon right now, as he has led a total of 144 of the 151 laps we've run.
And Marty, he was strong here last year when his teammate won the race, Dan Weldon. Both those guys were very strong, but you'll recall that Scott Dixon was running out of fuel in turns 3 and 4, had to come in off the banking onto the apron, had to serve a drive-through penalty after that, which put him out of the battle for the lead. He's always run very well here.
You just heard the call. That was Dixon's radio. We will pit. So they are with now 49 laps to go, looking at taking the stop, and here it is. Scott Dixon surrenders the lead to teammate Dan Weldon. They will not pit at the same time. Tony Kanaan also goes by. Got to get it down to 60 miles an hour when you hit the stripe right there. Meanwhile, there is Dan Weldon, your new race leader. While he continues to log laps, there on the right side of the screen is Scott Dixon. We'll send it to Jack Arute.
Remember, these crews have been to Japan and back, loaded cars. It's been the toughest 14 to 18 days of the season. Now they must be flawless on this final stop, taking in a full tank of fuel. And a yellow is out. Yellow is out.
Jack, we have a crash involving Buddy Rice. So Scott Dixon gets to complete his service because he was on pit lane. And now Ed Carpenter has a problem. Let's go to Brienne.
Ed Carpenter was pulling in for a stop that would only need fuel and tires, but EJ Viso parked in Ed's spot before he could get there, causing him to overshoot his own pit stop. He had to then be pulled back, and this is not what the Vision team was hoping for.
Buddy Rice is livid, pounds the side of the car. He is okay, although the car is not.
Now, with Dixon coming in for fuel, Weldon was just about ready to come in for fuel. Does he have enough fuel to be out on the track long enough when they start to keep the pits closed in this situation, or will he have to come in for a splash of fuel underneath the rules? Remember, you cannot come into the pits open. Now, Tony Kanaan is in,
and he'll have to take a splash of fuel only.
Okay, because he was going to run out of fuel on the racetrack. The team knows that by the information they have, so they send him in for just a splash. Vince Welch?
Well, and Scott, as you said, he was going to run out of fuel. That's why he was allowed to come in and get that splash. talked to George Klotz, who handles the strategy for this team, and they were scheduled to come in at lap 150. And I said, "What's that leave as your status the rest of the way?" And he said, "I don't know. We need some help." Generally, Scott, haven't these teams been talking about a pit window of about 44 laps? So if you've got 50 to go.
Well, 44 has been the number, and they're trying to stretch it out to 50 as we see Dan Weldon coming in now, probably about ready to run out of fuel himself, so he will come in for just a splash. Now, by the IRL rules, you will have to come in again once the track has opened up here with this pit lane. Jackaroo?
It will be a splash only for Dan Weldon, but it's also an advantage for Dan Weldon, so to speak, because with this caution, he'll be able to go the distance without any question. That is, of course, if he gets the pit stop that he needs when the pits are open for tires and a full load of fuel.
And the two Penske cars come in as they are making their stops now. And fuel only because pit lane is still not open. Danica Patrick comes in as well, as did Marco Andretti. Vince?
Same is true for Danica Patrick as she took that splash of fuel, and you see her motoring off toward the racetrack. But these teams will all come back for the full service pit stops once the pit lane opens for real.
So all 8 cars on the lead lap as we take another look at the incident. And oh man, did Buddy have hard contact.
Man, he just went along for a ride, guys. Something broke on the car. Buddy was in the perfect place on the racetrack. Everything was doing right by Buddy Rice until something went away on him. And that looks like that car is pretty much totaled. Remember, they've got to have these things ready for Indianapolis here in about a week's time.
All right, so pits are open. Let's go back and check in with Jack.
Marty, remember, they've already got some fuel, so they should be able to complete their fueling by the time they put the Firestone Firehawk tires on. Let's see. They do. They got the job. He is off the way, so there is a little bit of a glass half empty, half full scenario unfolding.
So it will be interesting to see how all this shakes out and how it leaves Scott Dixon. And there is Danica Patrick taking her final stop. And boy, they're having problems with the right rear. They can't get it off. Now
they cannot get the right rear on, and now it looks like maybe there's an issue in its terminal, as Dave Sharpley has just given the cut signal with his throat, meaning that they do have an issue that's not going to be able to be addressed with just another tire. So they've just turned off the car for Danica Patrick, and 1 week after winning in Japan, her race comes to an end prematurely in Kansas.
I can't tell for sure, but it looks like maybe the studs got sheared. I mean, it just looked like they were not able to get the hub back on.
Well, in that situation, absolutely. What they're looking at right now is that usually is just 4 little studs that come out of here that are the pins that actually hold on the wheel itself. But great catch, because what ends up happening now is that there's nothing there to stop the wheel from rotating on the hub itself.
So a tough break for Danica, as she will not be in the mix for the final run here. Let's check in with Jackaroo at the cutaway car.
Yeah, fellas, let's see if I can illustrate it. When you take a look at the hub on our target cutaway car, you see 1, 2, 3, 4 studs. That's basically what takes the wheel and keeps it secure. You see the holes here? So what you do is you put it in here, and then you add the wheel nut. Well, if those studs are gone, the hub and the wheel do not connect. Vince?
Well, and Jack, just as you explained, and this is the tire that was just taken off of Danica's car, and you see the damage just as Jackaroo had anticipated and had explained. Certainly a frustrating way for Danica. It's a frustrating day all the way around. Her car was not handling to her liking, and then the mechanical at the end. Her day goes short here at Kansas. We'll talk to her in just a moment.
All right, we'll catch up with you as soon as you catch up with Danica, Vince. Right now it is Dan Weldon, your race leader, followed by Kanaan, Castroneves, Briscoe, Hideki Muto, and Marco Andretti. That's your top 6. Scott Dixon is 7th, back on the lead lap. AJ Foyt the 4th, and Ed Carpenter, the 9th and last car on the lead lap. There is Danica. She's got the helmet off, and she takes a look a little bit earlier at the damage to the right rear. We'll go side by side. We'll catch up with her when we come back. Under our 4th caution here at the Kansas Speedway, and while we've got a moment, we want to salute Cameron Argetsinger, the man who started road racing, the tradition at Watkins Glen. He died earlier this week at the age of 87. The Glen will be celebrating its 60th year this year, and Cameron was the man who got it all started. Of course, the IndyCar Series will be racing there the first weekend in July, on July 6th. And we send our condolences along to the Argersinger family. And what a tradition he did start. If you've never been to the Glen, you've got to make it sometime before your racing days are over. Speaking of being over, there is the car being pulled back behind the wall, and let's check in with Vince Welch.
Danica, we documented the handling issues that you'd struggle with throughout the course of the day. Any idea whether or not that was related to the tire problem here that we just saw?
Yeah, the last one was. I mean, my understeer at the beginning was, you know, what definitely made me drop back. But I was climbing back up again, and I could see the leaders. It was like, you know, a yellow and a good restart, and we're back in it. But then that last one, you know, I went high in 3 and 1 and 2 because Marco was in the middle, and you know, I didn't know how many people I had underneath me in the middle of the corner, and then all of a sudden, you know, I got caught up in the gray and out of the throttle for an eternity and lost the whole straightaway. So that was disappointing. But then it was just, I got back going, and I'm like, man, this is some pretty exciting rear end stuff out here. And you know, it felt like something was wrong at one point with the left front, and maybe that's kind of what, I don't know when it started, I'm not sure, but you know, definitely the loose feeling that I was having that whole last stint was probably the rear tire moving when I got into the corner.
You had some tight racing with Thomas Scheckter and also with EJ Viso at earlier stages of the race. Is it drivers getting a little stingy out there, or is it just the kind of racing you expect here in a mile and a half?
Well, you know, I always expect Scheckter to drive like that. You know, that Viso, I don't know who he is even, so, you know, he's new, he's trying to, you know, he's got a pretty fast car, so, you know, he's learning the ropes of this oval racing, but, you know, he almost put me in the wall at one point. I'm like, look, dude, you're new. You better be nice, because we all know how to handle this a lot better than you do at this point, so that's all right. You know, you've got some newcomers, and they're going to be trying to push it, and they're not going to know how. You know, they're not going to know what they can and can't do. So, you know, there's a lot of etiquette in oval racing that, you know, is to be learned, and that takes a little bit of time. So, yeah, there was some close stuff out there, but didn't end up racing close at the end.
It is what it is. Thank you, Danica. Marty?
We now have 8 cars officially retired from the 27 that started this race, and those 8 will have to regroup and try and get the momentum going for Indianapolis. Speaking of women in motorsports, later today, in fact, following us, NHRA drag racing will be right here on ESPN2. Ashley Force, she's the current points leader in NHRA funny car action. Of course, it was Shirley Muldowney that paved the way with her 3 championships, let alone all the time she won national events. And Danica, of course, becoming the first to win in the IndyCar series. And I can't tell you exactly what's going on there, but Ashley's made 2 finals so far this year, and I don't think you want to miss today's race. That's as far as I can go. All right, we're going to step aside. We're under our 4th caution here. We have 37 laps to go at Kansas Speedway. Dan Weldon's in front. Well, Major League Baseball continues tonight. The Tigers host the Los Angeles Angels. That'll be Sunday Night Baseball presented by Taco Bell on ESPN. The coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Then tomorrow night, it's the New York Yankees taking on the Cleveland Indians. That's Monday Night Baseball, also at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN and ESPN HD. We're still under our 4th caution here. If you're wondering what the record is, it's 6. Hopefully we don't go that far. And let's take a look while we got a moment here on lap 166 of 200 to check in on our Firestone lap leaders. Scott Dixon with 145, Dan Weldon 13, Justin Wilson and Elio Castroneves, the 4 different leaders that we have had total in this race. We've had a total of 5 lead changes. Neither one of those are records for this event. We have 9 cars on the lead lap. We're waiting for the wave around to get Dixon, Foyt, and Carpenter back on the tail end of the lead lap. There is Scott, still behind the pace car. All right, Jack, obviously fuel is no longer a situation to worry about, but let's check in and see what the Ganassi team is talking about.
No, but the key, Marty, is the fact that the man that you're looking at is waiting for the wave around, Scott Dixon, who will find himself restarting in 7th position. He has just been told by his team that he can go to fuel position 1, as you alluded to, all the way through. But he is going to have to fight his way to his teammate, car number 10, and that is Dan Weldon. I just checked with Chip Ganassi about our leader, and he says that he can go to fuel position 1 as well. This will be interesting to see how Target Chip Ganassi attacks this race. Remember, if you've got one car that has to go to the front, another car that's leading, could there be team tactics? Let's check in with Vince Welch for an update on another team.
Well, that team would be Andretti Green Racing, and right now their leader is the 11 car of Tony Kanaan. Kanaan won here in 2005, and he's had a lot of good runs here. Top 5 in 4 of the 5 previous starts. George Klotz says they can go the distance at Full Ridge. Whether or not they've got anything for that AG or that Ganassi machine remains to be seen. That's why we're going to watch so intently here over the final 30-plus laps. But the rest of the AGR team, of course, Danica Patrick is already out, but Hideki Muto and Marco Andretti at 5th and 6th, keeping an eye on the big picture. Remember, Marco Andretti with DNFs the last 2 races, so most important for Marco Andretti is getting a good finish. Go the distance, don't gamble too much. So the 26 of Marco Andretti, happy with his car and happy to still be running so late in the race. Brian Pedigo.
In the number 3 spot is Elio Castro Neves, who has been instructed that he is free to race Full Ridge from here on out. But the even better news for this camp is that with Will Power and Danica Patrick out of the race, this extends Elio's points lead substantially. Right behind him is his teammate Ryan Briscoe in the number 6, who's in 4th position. This is the solid oval finish that Ryan really needs going into the month of May.
Well, the one thing we should point out, as you mentioned, the points. If Dan Weldon holds on to the points lead, he would actually move into 2nd place in the points, jumping up 4 spots, and would only be 12 markers behind Elio, which is basically what he had coming into this race. So while he picks up on the other 2, he would lose ground to that man right there. But this race is far from over. You know, while we're running under this yellow, couple of things we should point out. One, we're talking about a lot the Ganassi guys. Well, Scott Dixon's now led almost half of the laps completed this year. 313 out of now 649 total. That's 48%. Nice job for him. And also we want to send a get well to Dario Franchitti. Anybody watching the NASCAR Nationwide race yesterday saw Dario take a hard hit, fractured his ankle. He's going to be out a couple of weeks according to Chip, and we'll send our best as we're still thinking about you, Dario. Hope you're watching and doing well. All right, this is the last available lap that these cars are going to be able to pit. Then it's going to be a mad sprint for the finish here at the IndyCar 300 at Kansas. Who is going to take it? If Weldon wins, he becomes the first repeat winner. Same for Kanaan. Elio's never won here. Neither has Briscoe, nor has Hideki Muto. And remember, for Muto, it would be his first career win, as he is a rookie here in the IndyCar Series. Waiting to see if anybody is a last-minute taker. Don't think anybody needs to worry about any fuel. So here comes the wave around. And maybe we ought to explain what that's all about for maybe a first-time viewer.
What they want to have on the restart is to have the lead car of the race directly behind the pace car. So any cars that are in between the pace car and the leader will get the wave around, as you see right now. They will go around and follow in behind the tail end of all the cars that are on the lead lap, and then the pits will become closed, so those cars that do get the wave around cannot take advantage of popping in and getting any fuel. And now we have the leaders who get to fight out for the lead directly behind the pace car to take the green flag on the restart.
All right, that lead car there is Scott Dixon. He is trying to hustle it around, and you're saying, where's the leader? There they are, all the way over in turns 3 and 4.
Now, Marty, it's important to point out that on the initial start, drivers could not pass anyone until they get past the start line. On a restart, they have what they call the go zone back down there in turns 3 and 4. And once the green flag has waved, drivers are free to pass any cars around them. So look for Scott Dixon to sit back, take a run, and wait for that green flag sound coming over his helmet from the spotter. And he hopes to get past about 3 or 4 cars before he even makes it to the start line. That'll be his goal. His goal is to get up close to Dan Weldon, who's now leading this race.
While we've got a moment, let's remind you about the NASCAR Nationwide Series at Richmond. You'll see it on ESPN2 Friday night. Begin with NASCAR Countdown at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. If you need more information, just log on to ESPN.com. All right, well, as we look back into this field, Tony Kanaan running in second place. We're hearing he may have a vibration, Vince Welch?
That's right. Tony Kanaan came on his radio and says he feels like he might have an issue in the right rear. They're telling him from a telemetry standpoint that the car is fine, and also the right rear changer said they felt no jiggle in the car when they put that right rear on at the last stop. So the crew feels as though the car is secure, but Kanaan definitely feels a vibration in the right rear. They told him it's your call. You see, he's staying out.
All right, this is going to be the last lap of yellow. You can see Oriol Servia in the 5 car. He is a lap vehicle in between first place Dan Wheldon and Tony Kanaan. We can tell you there are 12 total cars between Dan Wheldon and Scott Dixon, who with Dixon being in 7th place. So 5 of those cars are lap vehicles, and it'll be interesting to see how quickly he can dispatch them. On the backstretch, Wheldon is not going to hesitate. He's got control of the field. Looks like Servia is staying down nice and low and going to give Kanaan some room to go. Dixon on the throttle through 3 and 4. We're getting ready, and we're back to green flag racing here on lap 173 of 200. You saw Dixon flash. He's got the high side. He's got a lot of traffic to make up. Kanaan did clear Servia through 1. Dixon still has his hands full. That's the 18 of Bruno Junqueira.
Spot outside Junqueira.
He clears Junqueira, moves a little closer. Ed Carpenter is now back in there in that yellow car, as well as A.J. Foyt the 4th. So they're getting hung up a little bit in that traffic, while the 9 car of Dixon has cleared. Nothing has changed up front. Now that dust is from the cleanup.
From Buddy Rice's accident, that's the oil dry that's down to get all the liquid that was on the racetrack. That's why the reason we had for such a long delay there. The Delphi safety crew will do a perfect job making sure that this racetrack is ready for these cars to go back and race at over 200 miles an hour.
It is Dixon in 7th, Foyt in 8th, Carpenter in 9th. Those are the last 3 cars on the lead lap trying to reel everybody else in. Meanwhile, up front, we will tell you that nothing has changed. As you can see, Dan Wheldon in control over Tony Kanaan, but a little further back, take a look. Here comes Dixon as he is caught up to, it looks like Marco Andretti, or is that the Hideki Muto right there as well. So yes, he's gotten around Marco. Now he's got Hideki Muto and the lap vehicle Graham Rahal in the 06.
He finds himself on the low side of the racetrack getting boxed in down there with nowhere to go. It's impressive, though, to see how well his car is working in traffic. He's being able to run the low line and high line. The cars in front just making that disturbed air going across his wings and usually upsets a car. He's not having any problems whatsoever, Marty.
There you go. Keep going.
There you hear on the radio. There you go. Keep going. He's got Muto underneath. Can he make it back to the front? We've got to stay at the side one more time. You won't miss a thing. We'll take you side by side. Hideki Muto says, no, I want to hold you off, Mr. Dixon. Meanwhile, up front, it is still Wheldon looking for 2 in a row. ESPN's presentation of the IndyCar 300 at Kansas is brought to you by Firestone, the first name in Indy racing. And in part by Scott's Turf Builder, Water Smart formula. Build a healthier lawn using less water. Back here at Kansas Speedway, you saw it in side-by-side. Scott Dixon continues to fight his way back through this field. He is now up to 5th. Ryan Briscoe is his next target right in front of him. He is 4.2 seconds behind his teammate Dan Wheldon. Wheldon has a ½ second lead over Tony Kanaan. Jackaroo.
Marty, the transmission to Scott Dixon was brief, but it was poignant. Pick them off one at a time.
And he has done that spectacularly. Take a look at the Firestone telemetry, and you are noticing he's running laps as fast as the race leader.
Which is very impressive because he's running in traffic. He's able to go through them. He did some great dicing with Hideki Muto in the sense that he was just trying to keep him boxed down when they came up to the lap car with Oriol Servio you saw on your side-by-side. But he's able to run high and run low. And it's one thing to catch a car, Marty, but it's another to be able to go by him. And wow, he just makes an easy move going past Ryan Briscoe and carries momentum going around Elio.
Caught a little bit of the draft just long enough, pops out from the high side. Can he make it? Yes, he's got him clear. Move Dixon to third. He's 4.4 seconds behind with 17 laps to go. He's got clean air in front of him. Weldon got to know what's going on. That's the difference. Does he have enough time?
Oh, that's a lot of distance here to go over the next few laps that we have, but it's one thing to be able to catch up to him, as I mentioned, another one to pass, and Tony Kanaan being in second will not want to let him go around very easy, simply from the fact that he's working on points towards the championship also.
You see the two Team Penske cars running pretty much in lockstep with now 16 laps to go, but they are losing contact now with the 9 of Scott Dixon. So now the drama is, can Dixon reel in the race leaders? The gap is 4.4 seconds still, so he picked up no ground on the last lap.
Matter of fact, he actually ran a 2:11.3 to Weldon's 2:11.6. The fastest guy there was Tony Kanaan at almost 212 miles an hour because he's getting a little bit of a draft from Dan Weldon's car that's up in front of Tony, who's actually helping him push the air. I'm not sure if Dixon's going to be able to make this happen, Marty.
Just maybe too much traffic. Too late in the race. Take a look at the race lead. Dan Weldon, can he become our first two-time winner at Kansas in the 8 years now that we have run this event? Tony Kanaan won this race back in 2005. Right now, it is their race to decide. 13 laps to go next time by.
And remember, Weldon really dominated last year, leading 177 laps, so the Target Chip Ganassi team really has this track figured out.
That is an understatement. Remember, coming into this race, Weldon had led over half of the race laps in the last 3 years, 333 out of 600. There's the gap back to Scott Dixon. He's got third place well in hand. He's pulled away from the Team Penske duo. But as you see, with just a few laps to go, 12, there's the difference, back to third place. As we go back up front, there's the race leaders. Let's go up to speed with Jagaroot.
Dan Weldon thought that maybe he was going to run out of fuel. He came on and took advantage of an IRL rule that allowed him to take a little fuel, then was able to come back in and take a pit stop when the pits were open, and it was a shorter pit stop than his teammate. It gave him the lead in this race. He is turning laps that have separated himself from second place, and for more on second, let's go to my fellow pit reporter.
Well, in that second place car is the 711 machine, Andretti Green Racing, Tony Kanaan. Kanaan told me earlier today, yes, definitely would like to win, although he felt as though it was a bit of a long shot against these Ganassi cars. But he said, what's most important is I definitely have to keep an eye on the championship and get the best possible finish. If you're not going to win, the best possible finish would be second. And you know, Kanaan, Jack, always has his eye on the prize at the end of the season.
Meanwhile, in third, Scott Dixon took advantage of being caught on pit road, took a full load of fuel, but it was costly for him. He had to wait for a wave around, and now he's trying to slice his way through the field. He's picked off all but 2 cars, finds himself in third, and he's running out of time. Let's go to Brianne Pedigo.
For Ed Carpenter, who's currently in 9th place today, has been a bit of a roller coaster. He fought his way back up to that 9th position. They thought they could go all the way on fuel, but that is not the case. In about 5 laps, the 20 will come in, guys.
All right, thanks for the update, guys, as we do have 9 cars on the lead lap. Rounding out the top 10 is Justin Wilson, 1 lap down, so a good run for Wilson. as he will crack the top 10, provided nothing else changes here in the final 8 laps. The margin has stayed the same, about 4.6 seconds between Weldon and Dixon. So in clean air, these guys are running basically the same speeds. In fact, Weldon just ran a lap at 2:12, now another one at 2:11.8, and that's what Tony Kanaan matches at 2:11.7, and Dixon at 2:11.6. So right now, just not enough laps. It's going to be decided between the guys in first and second.
And I don't think that Tony has enough for the target machines, as he said earlier. And as Vince reported, you know, just getting second place points is a smart move by a veteran driver. But right now, the battle seems to be just a bit further back as Marco Andretti starts to have a look at Ryan Briscoe to try and put some moves on some of these Team Penske machines.
Now remember, Marco is just trying to finish his first race of the last 3. He's had a terrible run of misfortune. Snapped the half shaft at St. Petersburg and then crashed on lap 1 at Motegi. He's got his hands full right now with both of the Penske machines, but just finishing this race would be good for the 26. Meanwhile, there is the 20 car making its final pit stop. Couldn't make the distance on the fuel that they had. They thought they might be able to, couldn't do it. Marco looks like he is going to get around Briscoe now, and here comes Marco's teammate Hideki Muto. That is also for position. So move Marco in front of Briscoe into 5th.
Two of the super teams here battling for position, Team Penske and Andretti Green Racing.
Marco going to look at the high side, heading down into 1. The longer way around. These cars so evenly matched with identical Honda engine plants. It's all in the setup and how brave you are on that high side. And right now, Marco's being pretty brave. He's side by side with Elio. There'll be 2-3 laps to go now, and can he close the deal? Nothing has changed up front.
Elio's going to try and work his car high to make Marco go around the very high side as much as possible. Marco's job is to come down and try to pinch Elio down towards the low side, so he's got to get out of the throttle.
And look what happened for Dan Weldon. He gets around the slower traffic, and Tony Kanaan is boxed by the 20 of Ed Carpenter, the 24 of Jay Howard. That may have just sealed the deal for Dan Weldon. This time by, there will be 1 lap remaining. Tough break for Tony, although he will score valuable points. Here comes the white flag. So it is 1 lap for Dan Weldon.
Last lap.
He won this race last year, leading 177 laps. This year, he's led 48, and he'll lead the most important one of all. As he comes around for his 14th career win, he'll become the first repeat winner at Kansas 2 years in a row. It's Dan Weldon taking the checkers. Kanaan comes across. Look at the battle here as we go back. Dixon 3rd. Who gets it in 4th? It is Castroneves edging Marco Andretti. Hideki Muto in 6th. Ryan Briscoe 7th. AJ Foyt the 4th. Rounds out the top 8 on the lead lap. Let's check in with Jack Arute.
We caught up with Chip Ganassi on the way to victory lane. Chip, from your estimation, what was the difference today for Weldon and your team?
I'll tell you, Jack, it wasn't the last segment. It was the one before that. You know, we were able to save fuel behind Dixon. Obviously, we pitted a lap later than he did, and you saw there was a yellow, and that was the whole thing. That was the whole race.
Go to victory lane.
Great day for the Target team.
Dan Weldon's last year was 1 year ago here at this track. It's the 2nd in all-time wins now with 14. Sam Hornish Jr. leads with 19. We'll talk to him when we come back. Well, back here at Kansas, you can see our winner, Dan Weldon, as he is now climbing out after getting a cool drink, and we'll send it to Vince Welch.
Dan Weldon celebrating, giving a nice celebratory kiss to his wife, Susie. Their first win as a married couple, so congratulations to Dan Weldon as he gets the congratulations from all of his parties and he wants to make sure that he gets a hug from Chip Ganassi as well. So it's been a long time coming for Dan Weldon, his first win since he won at this track a year ago, and giving congratulations to his team. Dan, turn around here. Congratulations. Your first win since this victory a year ago. I know last year some of the struggles were frustrating for you. How good does it feel to be back in victory lane today?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic team effort from everybody at Target Chip Ganassi Racing. Unfortunately, I think Scott just got caught out on the yellow, but it was a strong day for him. And it has been a little frustrating at times. And to get the 10 car back in victory lane just shows we could be back, and we certainly mean a lot of business. But it was a real strong day.
You always talk about all roads leading to Indianapolis. How important is it for you to win in the race leading up to the month of May?
I haven't really worried about that so much this year because it's been so competitive. We need to concentrate on each individual race at a time. But it's going to be an incredibly competitive Indianapolis 500. I expect both Target cars to be up front, and with Honda power, it's certainly very, very tight out there. I got to say one thing to a friend of mine, Ava, for picking the black boots today. So she did a good job. Thanks, Ava.
Some good luck boots for Dan Weldon getting him to victory lane today, Marty.
Traditionally, he's always worn the white boots, so maybe going to Indy, he'll be in black for the rest of the month of May. Talk about frustration. How about Scott Dixon? Take a look at this, the way he throws the wheel. 246 laps is what he has led in the last 2 races without a victory. But here's the good news for Scott Dixon. He is going to pull into 2nd place in the points championship, just 6 markers behind Helio Castroneves. 9 back is Dan Weldon. Tony Kanaan is now 15 behind. Danica slips 2 spots. She's now 5th, 34 markers. And look at Marco Andretti, jumps up 5 positions and is in 7th place in the point championship. All right, we're going to see you Saturday, May 10th from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It'll be pole day. Coverage begins at noon Eastern on ESPN2. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Coming up next, it is the Summit Racing Equipment and HRA Southern Nationals, and you don't want to miss it. All I can tell you is it's going to be worth the time invested. Congratulations to Dan Weldon. For our entire ESPN crew, this is Marty Reed. Till we meet again.